I quickly introduced myself. I'm an architect. I graduated from the School of Planning and Architecture in 2017. I was 19 years old when I designed my first residence. I think I always wanted to be an architect. Since I was 15 or 16 years old, I had that clarity. Anyway, I started my career working with Studio Lotus, which is one of the most sought after architecture and interior design firms in the world. And later, I spent 3 years working as the studio head of this place called Innovation India, which is a design and build enterprise that builds offices for clients like Amazon, Nestle, WeWork, and TeamSpace. I founded Zika in 2022. And yeah, so that's a little about me. How did I start? So that's actually very interesting because um, I was working at Innovation as the studio head on these office projects. And one day, my younger sibling, he has a background in finance. He came to me and he said that, what if there was like a video game or something where people could just go online and sort of design their houses. And at that same point in time, I remember that I was really struggling with my work at Innovation because we used to design these really big offices, right? Like 2 lakh square feet, 3 lakh square feet, and we used to only get about 60 to 90 days to make this entire thing. So out of those 90 days, I would say 15 days was design and the rest was, build time. So in 15 days, I used to struggle with lots and lots of different kinds of problems. For example, my process of making my BOQs was very manual. There were lots and lots of revisions from my clients' side. So getting a sign off from them, getting approvals from these people was extremely hectic. Our rendering times were very high. We were using very hard to use software. So I basically took this thing that my sibling said and I sort of started to apply it to not from the perspective of a homeowner so much, but from the perspective of an architect. Okay. And that's how, that initial thought sort of morphed into what we now know as Zika. Yeah.
So you mentioned your sibling, like, is he or she in design or some other field?
No, he has a background in finance.
Oh, okay. A little bit of the brain brainy field. So you also have a co-founder, right? Yeah. So how did you two meet?
Okay, so my co-founder is Vipum. He's an electronics and communications engineer, and we met in high school. I know him since class 11. He used to basically help me with. I basically met him in my physics, chemistry, math tuition, and I could not understand anything there. So he's basically the reason why I was ultimately able to clear my class 12 both exams for my, especially my physics and my maths exams, because I used to be very scared of those subjects. So I've known him for a good 13, 14 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the equation like? Like, what do you handle? What does he handle? Or do you take decisions collectively?
So it's very streamlined. He looks after everything pertaining to the product. I used to be involved in the product at an earlier, while you were still sort of younger at an early stage of the company. I'm no longer involved in the product so much because that's his domain. So developing the product, all kinds of product development is something that he handles. All the other boring parts I handle. Sales, marketing, operations, yeah.
So your background as an architect is something that obviously is very valuable because of what Zika is doing. It's catering to the architectural community or interior design community. Yeah. So speaking of the community, like our field, the architects, we are very resistant to change, I feel. Like even in college, when we tried to use Revit or certain BIM software, we received a lot of resistance from our faculty in 2024. So that trend pertains till date even when you go on field or in some offices. So how do you convince people that your solution will actually help them out?
So that's a great question. I think there are two things that I'd like to point out right now. I think ChatGPT has made my life very easy because ever since ChatGPT has arrived at the scene, people I'm sure they're still very resistant, and construction is, the least digitized sector in the world. So we sort of expect that resistance, but ChatGPT has sort of opened people's minds to the idea of AI. Most of us have used it. Most of us have seen it in action. So I think, ChatGPT has really helped. I think apart from that, whenever we are talking to clients, I think one of the things that I've realized is that we talk to a certain specific kind of a client. Like if I talk in context of Zika, we only try to talk to the enterprises, sort of the bigger firms, not the smaller players, for two reasons. A, they have the willingness to pay for these kinds of software and these kinds of tools. B, they're just fundamentally more open because they know that this is what is, going to give them that competitive edge over other players in the market. Another thing that we sort of try to highlight when we're trying to convince them is we just tell them that, this is the amount of time that you will save, but it is equivalent of so much money. Yeah, like a time versus money sort of a saving, sort of an ROI that I prepare for these people and I present it to them, and then when they see that, okay, saving 10 days doesn't make a lot of difference to them, but saving 5 lakh rupees equivalent of 10 days is easier in India especially.
Value is always going on in heads of business people, I guess. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's an easier way to sort of get them on board.
You mentioned that you give them some statistics like 10 days, 2xp, 10xp, like I went through the website. So when you say save 50% of your time using your tool, what does that translate into?
So if I talk about what we've started doing now is that we're only catering to enterprises, and presently I'm focused a little bit more upon the commercial interior segment because that's where I started from, so I know most about that segment.
Okay.
When we say that we'll help them save 50% time, the first thing that it means is we'll help you save 50% of your design time. So if you're taking 15 days to design right now, you probably take 8 days to design with us. How does that happen? So the unique thing about Zika is that it's the only product in the market which enables designers to design with all the real world branded interior materials in the market. So as soon as you start designing on Zika, it automatically starts giving you your bill of quantities or your costing and a very authentic looking visualization of your space. And one of their main deliverables, like apart from making layouts and apart from making GFCs, is that you're supposed to quickly create your 3Ds and your BOQs. And maybe in some cases your material boards, lighting boards, finishes and stuff like that. So out of those 4 or 5 deliverables, 3 of them happen on Zika. And since it's a very instant sort of a process, that's how we're able to help them save time and save money and do all of those things.
Okay, cool. Makes sense. So, whenever you go talk to people in our industry, I'm sure there might be some conversations that translate into AI as a threat or an ally. There might be some debate heating up. So, what's your take on this? Do you see it as a threat? Do you see it as a tool? What's your take?
So, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA said this very interesting thing. I'm so sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I just call him NVIDIA CEO. But NVIDIA CEO said this thing, very interesting thing the other day. He said that AI is definitely not a threat. But somebody, like AI is not going to replace you, but somebody who knows how to use AI will definitely replace you. And I think that summarizes it perfectly. If you're not using all of these AI and these new digital tools that are available in the market and upskilling yourself, then there's a huge chance that you will be, obsolete and irrelevant faster than you know. So just upskill yourself and everything should be fine. I also read this very interesting thing. It's this book called 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. He's like a very famous investor in Silicon Valley, and even though I'm not really sure if I agree completely with what he says, but he says that replacement by AI is a worry for the 22nd century. Now, I'm not sure how true that is, but it just seems like a very comforting thought too. So, I wouldn't worry about AI replacing us. I think another interesting thing about the construction sector is that there are probably only 5 or 10% firms which are large enough to be able to have mass layoffs in the first place. Like Meta has like so many employees and all of those things, so they can have mass layoffs. But construction is typically dominated by team sizes of less than 10-15 people. So mass layoffs as a term is not exactly, I would say, valid to the sector so much.
Yeah. So construction industry, why do you think everything in the construction industry is so slow and same as the old processes, despite having so much new tech to look forward to?
I kind of expect it. The reason for that is that, we are the least digitized sector. That means that even the sector like agriculture is more digitized than us. That's how terribly under digitized we are. There's this very interesting report that I read a while back which said that since the 1920s, productivity has just dropped in the sector. It hasn't even improved. So in the last 100 years, productivity is just, dropped. So that's how behind we are. I think if I just talk about the Indian market, one of the things that I've observed is that people have they don't understand opportunity costs. They don't understand that time is money. They think that money is money. Explaining something to them that this is the amount of time that you will save, and with that saved time, you will be able to expand your business. And this particular tool or technology will help you do that. Is slightly difficult. I think the mindset of the people is also such. But having said that, I'm also noticing a change with the younger generation where, late millennials and Gen Z and stuff. Like, I'm really banking on all of you people to actually change this thing and actually adopt technology. So I think eventually, maybe 10 years down the line, hopefully it's going to be different than what it is.
You mentioned that the industry, the bigger players are willing to pay for your services or any other service that basically cuts down their time and improves their profit margin. So why do you think the younger folks that are joining these firms are working overtime, getting paid little to very little margins in terms of revenue? Why do you think that is?
I think if you're working for a relatively larger player, you shouldn't be that overworked and underpaid. That is something which is, more prominent in a relatively smaller setup. I think traditionally we've just been very overworked and underpaid. I also think that the COA is to blame for lots of these things. Their regulations are just not, they're sort of irrelevant and obsolete, and they're not in tune with what is happening today. They're at least 50 years old and irrelevant. So I feel like that is also something that sort of bars the designer from, not being paid sufficiently. But yeah, I think it's just like if you're working with an MNC or if you're working with a slightly bigger setup, they will definitely, I hope they'll definitely pay. Yeah.
And do you think AI will streamline our workflow better so that the firms can actually contribute whatever profit they get from saving that time and effort and translating it into better profits for the people below?
Absolutely. I think the reason for that is very simple, because if they're able to, if they're taking 10 days to perform a task, then and if that same task can be performed in 5 days, not only have you saved time, you've also increased your profits. Once they've increased their profits, they are definitely in a position where, all of that money can also trickle down, and it can sort of have that, it can be distributed amongst the entire team. So 100%, I think if you upskill yourself with AI, if you know how to use these tools, it will help you save time and money on all kinds of levels across the organization.
That is because currently also in the industry, even if I talk about my batch, 50% of us have diverted to different fields, and the remaining 25 has dropped out and pursuing some other course, and 25% are actually practicing with some architect. So that is very slim margin, but that is to do with, I think, the remuneration and the work hours that are expected. So that automatically, for a young mind who is like eager to learn and very hopeful about the future, that demotivates in a way, I feel.
No, absolutely. I think one of the ways to make sure that you're not underpaid, at least you will probably always be overworked, is to have your own business. Because again, I mean, it's obviously a struggle, but if you struggle in the right place for 2 or 3 years, you can still get to that place where you will be making a decent amount of money for yourself. I feel like that's something that can be done, but yeah, the attrition rate otherwise is appalling and it's very concerning.
Starting your own business, you said. What do you think a person like me who's just graduated out of college, or maybe is in college, we don't have to choose, but what steps should that person take if they're looking to start up something in the architecture, AI, and the tech field?
So a tech startup is basically a startup with technology at its core, right? So that means that first we need somebody on board who can build the technology for us. Now there are lots of people who might say that, we'll learn how to code and we'll do this and we'll use AI to generate code and stuff like that. I'm not sure how much that works. From my own personal experience, it does not. So the first thing that you need if you want to build a tech startup is to have a tech co-founder. The second thing that you should do if you're building any kind of a startup is to have a co-founder anyway. It just makes things easier. When you're looking for a co-founder, I think one of the most important things is that you partner with somebody who truly believes in your idea, who is also all in like you are, and who is not just testing the waters. So I think that's important when you're starting out. If you're building in the tech space, you still have to understand that construction tech as a sector is still very nascent. And I think irrespective of construction or not, tech startups are very hard. So you need to be very passionate about the space that you're in, the problem that you're solving, and don't do it just because you think you'll get rich very quickly, because that's not gonna happen. That's the truth is that it's actually very hard, and I feel like these days being an entrepreneur or entrepreneurship generally is like really romanticized, and people think that it's like very cool. But the truth is that it's very unromantic and it's extremely hard. So yeah, if you're willing to give maybe 7, 8, 10 years of your life just building something every day, then you should probably do it. But that's the kind of mindset that you should have. It's not gonna happen overnight. And yeah, tech co-founder because tech startup.
Okay. So when do you think is the right time for you to transition or take a chance on a startup if you're a student or a graduate? Like, do you think you should have certain experience in the field like you have that gives you a clearer understanding, or do you think there's no right time, just jump right in when you feel it?
There's no right. Even when you start, like we started, you learn everything on the job. There are lots of things. Most things are going to catch you off guard, so you have to take care of them in real time. And no amount of experience or preparation prior to actually doing the job can help you resolve these things. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's a right time, but you should definitely, if you're building in this space, like we run a B2B business, so it's specifically for architects and interior designers. So I've personally spent a lot of time talking to lots of these people. I must have spoken to maybe 250, 300 people by now, because that gives me a very good idea of exactly where the problem lies. And once you know what the problem is, I think you can spend some time in the field just to understand if there's a problem. but there's no real right time to start. The right time to start is now. You should just start as soon as possible because you'll spend maybe 2-3 years just figuring things out.
Great. I think that makes sense. So, according to you, what are the biggest challenges that you faced when you were starting or even after?
I think it's mostly like the biggest challenge is your own mindset. If you don't have a long term, if you don't think long term, and expecting that things will happen quickly, like that's what I used to think. I used to think that in 3 years, we will have done this and we will have done that. But the truth is that it takes a lot of time. So being prepared for that, being prepared to spend 8 to 10 years of your life just building this day in and day out is a challenge. Managing your emotions is a very big challenge. I think that's the biggest challenge of all because as a tech startup founder, most things go wrong. There are only a handful of things that go right. When things are going wrong, you feel really bad about it. But even if the smallest of things go right, you feel really good about it. So it's like, an extreme range of emotions. So regulating your emotions, I think, is a challenge. If you're on this journey, you should surround yourself with people who love you and who support you, like friends and family and stuff, because I think that's very important. But I think one of the main challenges is your own mindset. Don't run out of money, because if you run out of money, then what are you going to do? Building tech fundamentally is expensive because as opposed to a traditional business, you're investing in the future. So whatever you're building today is not going to be used maybe for the next 2 or 3 years while you're building it. So having that runway and sort of managing your finances is probably another common challenge. One needs to be prepared for those things.
So, speaking of funding, what are some of the ways where young startups or young founders can get certain funding for their ventures?
I'm so sorry because I'm going to sound very bleak now, but the truth is that until and unless you have a product, until and unless you have early paying customers, nobody's going to fund you. This is just my experience. These are just my thoughts, but this is what my journey has been. If you're trying to raise VC money, lots of VCs in India will tell you that, we invest pre-seed, pre-product, on an idea stage, pre-traction. I think that those are lies. And that's just a very nice marketing strategy for them as well, to be able to, differentiate themselves from all the other VCs in the community. But the truth is that you need all of these things in place before you can raise any amount of money. So in my experience, nobody's going to give you survival money. They are going to give you growth money. And I don't see this from a bitter place. If I sort of keep myself in the shoes of a venture capitalist or an investor, then even I will want that, if I'm taking a bet on someone, I'm, trusting them with my money, I will want that bet to work. So it is the safest for me also when you have all of these things in place. Having said that, I don't think that, VCs in India, again, just my experience, they don't really have so much of a risk appetite. Another interesting thing that I've learned about India is that as opposed to the US, where time is expensive and money is cheap, here it's the complete opposite, right? Like time is cheap and money is expensive.
Yeah.
So funding opportunities, there are lots of grants that are available out there that you might be able to apply for and maybe figure things out. But I think you have to be very lean. You have to be very focused with how you deploy your finances, especially for the first 2 years, and expect no help. I think if you have low expectations and you just don't expect any help, then you're good to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Great advice. So, just this last piece of question on advice for the younger folks or people like me. So, this is, if you want to answer it for entrepreneurs or just for architects in general, that is, I'll leave up to you. But what skills do you think we as architects or entrepreneurs should learn despite other than design?
I'll answer this in the context of an architect because we're all architects. And this is something that comes from personal experience. I think the number one skill that you should hone and you should definitely learn is sales. Sales is something that we're fundamentally not taught about. And it's something that I also struggle with on a daily basis because I've had to, sort of self-educate myself about it. But building something is great. Building something that people want is even nicer. But at the end of the day, being able to communicate that well and making sure that you're able to effectively sell your product or your service or your brand is all that matters. So I think sales is very important. Marketing yourself, how to build your own personal brand is something that's very important. One of the most important things is just listening to people. I think, if you're talking to somebody, just listen to them. Don't listen to them because you feel like this person will help me in my business. Listen to them because you're actually interested in what they're building. It takes time. As a startup founder, you're also very desperate, so you can't always just keep listening to people and not have this thought at the back of your mind that, how are they going to help me in my business or what help? But try to get rid of that thought as much as you can and try to, cultivate relationships. So I think building relationships, networking and sales is something that's most important. It's probably more important than design as well, because even if you run a traditional studio, you as a business owner, you would be doing more of these things and less of design.
Yeah.
You would probably be overseeing it. You would still be responsible for the vision and for strategy and for guiding the entire process, but you're not going to be involved in, in the core process, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so sales, marketing, creating relationships, and being a good listener. That's the gist of what you just said, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think I agree because half of the time, even I get a little confused. Even in job interviews, how do I sell myself to this person? We are not really thought about this. So, and eventually, when you start your own firm, your architecture firm, getting clients is all on you. Nobody's going to help you out. So that is when we can use the skill as well. Yeah.
I think you mentioned a very interesting thing. I'll tell you one trick that I use. So what I do is, especially if I know who I'm going to talk to, especially if in a job interview, if you know who you're going to talk to or who your client is, who you're pitching to, just study them and, just look them up online, look them up on LinkedIn, see where they're coming from, and then try to talk in their language. Think of them as your target audience and then sort of do that. I can also give you an example of this. So I used to be very crazy about doing these design competitions way back in college. And we won this very cool thing once, and the reason we were able to win that was because we used to study our jury in and out. We used to know exactly what their sense of aesthetics is, what they think. And I'm not saying that we used to just make what they wanted. We used to do whatever we wanted. But we also used to subtly align with their vision. I remember this one time, this guy, he was known for using, very bold colors in the buildings that he used to. So one of these buildings that we made as part of the design, we just painted it red. And this guy was absolutely blown away by it because it hit a weight and it sort of resonated with him. So I think, talking in their language and knowing who your target audience is will help with that process. I can't guarantee anything because I fail every day, but this is a hack that I consistently use now.
That's really interesting. I'm going to look at that. A really cool hack. Okay, so now I'll shift the conversation back to AI again. So that this is like a open-ended question. if you have all the resources available, you have no limitation on resources, what sort of AI tool will you develop that you think is the most needed or will be very helpful in the paid evening?
Zika. I mean, there's limited resources, unlimited resources. I'll just build Zika. I think we have a very long term and a very wide vision for where we want to take our company, and I think in the next 10 years it will look very different from where we are now. So no matter how many resources I get, I probably deploy them into the AI tools that I already have and sort of build it out. Yeah.
Okay, that is your answer, but we want a very different answer for if somebody is watching this and thinking, okay, Zika is not my competition, I want to start something else. So anything else that is basically lacking in the field that somebody can tap into if they start?
To be honest with you, so I'm added on this WhatsApp group which has all the construction tech founders in the world. And it's a very intimidating group because everybody is building something or the other throughout the construction life cycle.
Okay.
What differentiates your offering is that is other things. You know, are you building for the same segment, or are you building in the same geography, or these are things that sort of differ and become like a differentiation. Personally, I think one of the areas where we're yet to see development, I'm not sure if it's directly related to construction. It's at the intersection of a couple of different things. But being able to get like your digitizing things, like creating 3Ds for everything, like of objects, that is something that we're still struggling with. And I see a very big opportunity in that because even AI is not able to crack that. Our models are just not there yet. And for augmented reality, virtual reality, metaverse, whatever, you need these things. The most basic, idea is that you have a digital replica or a twin of literally every real world object. Now, the trouble is that you've got a bunch of things out there. You've got something called photogrammetry, you've got LiDAR, you've got 3D scanners. They all have limitations. And none of these solutions are good enough. So, sadly, the only solution that we currently have in this space is to manually make these things. Because it's only then that you're able to achieve that level of detail and perfection. But I feel like if somebody is able to, sort of work in this space, I think it's an absolute gold mine. Like they'll build like a rocket ship.
Okay, cool. So, with so much AI innovation, construction technology, all of this happening, there will be a surge in the use of AI naturally. But with that comes ethical use of AI. So how can we ensure responsible use of AI? Is there a way, or it's not possible? What do you think?
So I have a friend. He's an architect. He recently completed his MBA from one of these fancy colleges. And the other day I got to know that he basically wrote his entire MBA thesis using ChatGPT in 30 minutes. And this guy topped. Not only did he not get caught, he topped his thesis. And to be honest with you, I was so proud of him when I heard this. So I think I'm the wrong person to be asking this question. I have no idea how you're going to regulate it. Yes, there should be some sort of regulatory measures that you take so that it does not harm people, or you're not able to inflict harm on another person. But honestly, I don't think I'm equipped to answer this question. I'm sure there are like smarter people than me who can help you out with this question.
No worries. So you mentioned doing your assignments through AI. I think most of us, by the time I was doing thesis, ChatGPT was there. So I also didn't let it write completely, but it was a big part of my thesis as well. But that is the extent to which AI has been integrated in our education. It's unofficial, not official yet. So, do you think there should be more integration? If so, how, which all fields can we integrate AI in our education?
So if I, again, if I just talk about maybe design and architecture, like one of the interesting things that we've done is now we're integrating Zika in the curriculum of an interior design school for an academy. And we've signed an MOU with these people, and what they're doing now is that they're integrating it throughout their courseware, and they're, actively teaching their students how to do this. And I think that it's fantastic, and they should be doing this with as many AI tools as possible. They're also teaching them Chat GPT and all of these Mid Journey and stuff like that. Like they have proper courses on these things, and that's very important because that's where the industry is headed. So instead of thinking about it as AI, just think about it as this thing that this is like another AutoCAD or this is another sketch. Like when AutoCAD came, I'm sure that it was extremely disruptive because everybody was making things with their hands. And then suddenly these people come and they're like, just like draw lines here, like on your computer. So it must have been crazy at that time. So it's similar. Like if you don't do it, and if that's where the industry is headed, then it's like Nvidia CEO saying that if you don't do it, then somebody who does it will replace. So I think you should just integrate as much of it as you can. Now is not the time to worry about technology and how its integration will be harmful for our students. That time is long gone. If you were, you should have done or not done this maybe 10 years back. Now there's no looking back.
Yeah. So I feel there will be like a immediate rise, because in our colleges, even BIM or automation is looked down upon. So suddenly AI comes in. So from hand drafting to CAD to now AI, like 3 steep rises. So do you think this process will in any way hamper the creative thinking part of design?
I don't think so. In my experience, what these like bigger organizations and enterprises are also doing is that I've spoken to a bunch of these guys now, and everybody just says that they want to automate. We want to use AI to automate most of our mundane, repetitive tasks, so we can focus on the creative aspect of design. So I feel like it'll just boost those things. It will just give you more time to think about these things, and it will simultaneously maybe help you generate lots of these things as well. So I don't think that it's definitely like a good thing. It will just enhance creative thinking.
Okay, wonderful. So that was it from my questions. But do you want to tell people more about Zika? Or where can we find more about Zika? And your LinkedIn page is very interesting. Yeah.
I'm trying to become an influencer. I'm posting senselessly on LinkedIn like 3 or 4 times a week, and I'm trying to increase the frequency. So thank you. If you want to find more about Zika, I mean, you can just contact me. My number is there on the website. You can just WhatsApp me or call me. We'll be happy to take you through a demo and get your thoughts. I think Zika is very interesting. What we're building now, like the reason why I am very motivated to do this is because I'm yet to come across a product that has this real-time integration with a real-world material library. Lots of times we get compared to BIM, which is fair, but I feel like there's an other entire layer to BIM, which is basically your local market and what is actually available there, which is something that I don't see any other tool offering. And for me, it's a lot of the thrill comes from the fact that I'm building something which not a lot of people are currently working on.
Yeah.
So I think that's what keeps me going. But yeah, if you have any questions about Zika, you can just hit me up, or otherwise you can book a demo with us.